Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another Rebelway webinar. My name is Urban Bradesco, and I will be your host for the evening. With us today is the awesome Floyd Billingy. Dude, your last name, so cool.
Billingy. Thank you.
So good. Floyd is currently a 3D artist working at a new company called Silver Rain Games, but has previously been a lead artist and a CG supervisor at Axis Animation and Splash Damage. Floyd has been in the industry working with environments for the last 9 years, starting in UDK, and then he went on to Unreal 4 and now having some fun with Unreal 5. Floyd, it's awesome to officially have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me and for allowing me to curate these tutorials for everyone.
Yeah, dude, I think it's going to be so cool. So before we actually go to the meat and potatoes of the webinar, let's check out the promo video for our new Intro to Unreal workshop. Punch it, Caleb.
Hello, my name's Floyd Billingy, and welcome to my beginner's tutorial for Unreal Engine 4 and 5 and the game art workflow. We'll be going through the basics and onto some more intermediate topics, starting at getting used to the engine, working with its tools for blocking out and management, to hotkeys, as well as setting up lighting and ambient scene effects. The tutorials will move on through to landscape tools and terrain painting, then to asset placement, where we will go through the various avenues for acquiring assets and implementing them. We'll utilize Unreal's procedural placement systems in conjunction with hand painting. I've created some tutorial sections on asset creation and texturing that use today's workflows, but we will learn some simple tricks to get more realism and interest out of your handmade assets. We will then work on getting those assets into the engine, along with custom master shader setups that will really help your assets shine and allow you to tweak them in engine on the fly. We'll take a surface look at Unreal systems and use them to create some nice ambient effects that really complement the scene. Then we'll round the whole series off with a look at cameras, post-process, and cinematic workflows, creating a beautiful cinematic that will show your scenes off as best as possible. You will then be able to render your scenes out for the highest possible quality. I hope you're all as excited as I am, so please join me on this great tutorial journey.
Woo! Smooth and cinematic.
It's so strange hearing my voice back in that video. Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah, listening to yourself is always, it's a thing you have to get over. Yeah. But I'm super happy with how it turned out in the end at the video. I think it looks very cinematic, super high quality. Yeah. Yes. So actually we have kind of an announcement. I don't think we actually announced this anywhere yet. It's on the website, but we are actually adding 2 more weeks of just pure FX related content to the workshop. That's not even in the promo. So that's happening as a bonus, as an add-on, and we're going to be showcasing you guys what we have in store very soon. But yeah, I think it's going to be very cool that we kind of get the full package, like the full intro to Unreal for, covering everything with environments, lighting, and then also effects. So you get like the full adventure. I think that's it, Floyd, for everything from my side. So I'm going to punch it back to you and let's see what you got, man.
Okay, cool. So shall I play I'll play the looping video and we can just talk a bit about what the course is going to be. Sure. Going from here. So let me just share screens. Okay, cool. So what I've done is for this little section here, I've just taken some videos of things like really cool projects that other people have done that are on YouTube or ArtStation or whatever, but also kind of fit the bill of what it was that I should probably press play. what it was that I was trying to, or we're trying to do really in this tutorial, which is create a set of kind of learning videos or tutorials that enable someone to jump into Unreal that's never used it before and create scenes that are mind-blowing quality. And really, the Unreal's it's a hard tool to get that kind of that super finesse with, but it's a fairly easy tool to get into and just get to working out everything. So yeah, these videos kind of explain in a way exactly what you should be able to do once you finish the course. So yeah, there are this one here is the Megascans scene, and basically the tutorial is going to go through all of the different stages and all of the different things that you're going to need to do or learn in order to create scenes like this. So we go through in the beginning in week 1, just looking at the engine and things like hotkeys, moving around the viewport, using some of the starter content that exists in the engine already. And then we take a look at lighting as well, a fairly brief look at lighting, just so that everyone understands how it is that you use lighting in engine. I talk a bit about the two main workflows. So there's baked lighting and then there's dynamic. And then there are a few variations on dynamic as well. And then in week 2, I push on into landscapes. So we look at landscapes and terrains, or the landscape editor. And I use a program called World Machine quite heavily there. There are other programs as well. There's something called Gaia. I think there are other ones on top of that too. But World Machine has a free version, which is the best. And although it limits you to a 1K size, we do some tricks and stuff to be able to get good resolutions out of the mountains and the terrains that we're going to use in scene. So we use that to create our base landscape, and then the mountains in the distance, and then we create an even more distant variant that's, rather than using Unreal's terrain and landscape tools to procedurally place things, it's kind of a baked, more optimal version, kind of like what you just saw in the background there. And then we move on in week 3 to asset placement, and we start looking at how it is that you get assets and content into Engine from exterior sources, or whether you do it yourself or however. We kind of try and cover all of the different bases there, and even push on into procedural placement and that the hand-painted kind of version of placement as well. So there's, as well as doing it by hand simply, there's also like a painted version that you can use in Unreal. And then we push on to shader creation and asset creation as well. So that's the section where we kind of make the sword, because I didn't want the whole thing to just be about, let's grab some Megascans content and make a cool scene. I wanted to also show what it is that we do to make an asset and then bring it into Engine and have that asset look as good as possible. And then some of the tips and tricks that we use to texture that in the games industry and in the cinematic industry. And then I make a fairly simple master shader that allows you to do a few things like tweak hues and saturations and change the roughness values and stuff in Engine without you having to go back out to Photoshop or an exterior program to like tweak those. So it allows you to start tweaking things on the fly in Engine. And it gets people to think a bit more like how it is that we think in studios. In that, yeah, you bring content in and we want to try and do as much as possible in Unreal to just kind of work on those things afterwards. And it takes out that middleman of constantly going backwards and forwards to another program to bring a small change back in. And then there's a little bit about effects. I know you guys expand on it massively, but there's a small bit about the effects that I use in the scene as well, and just how it is that you go about creating those. Some small ambient things as well, like there's like panning clouds in the background that are fairly simple, as well as fog and other things that are really cool. And then for the last section, I move on to cameras and post and cinematics. And that's just to kind of do exactly what it is that these guys have done here, and just get those cinematic shots and get those final quality videos out of what it is that you've made. And whether it be for concept art or for if you're doing awesome cinematics like these, you'll be able to use all of the stuff that I explained throughout this tutorial to achieve that end goal. So yeah, I can show you a few little bits. I can pause this video actually, or do you want to just finish letting it play? I don't mind. It's up to you. What do you think?
No, I think it's fine. Actually, we had a few questions about like some of the assets that are going to be in the workshop, and some of them, I guess, that are playing on in the video.
Cool. Yeah.
Can you get most of them on like the marketplace?
So everything, all of the external assets that I've put into the. I've made quite careful to make sure that it's only stuff that everyone can get for free. No one's going to have to pay for anything. These are all things that are readily available. Some of them are used in that medieval scene. Some of them aren't. Some of them are used in other places. Some of them don't come from Megascans at all and come from another marketplace provider. I think the trees come from another marketplace provider. So yeah, you'll be able to pick up everything from the marketplace, and I'll explain how to do that in the tutorial as well.
Awesome. Love it.
Was there any other questions you wanted to throw in just now?
Unreal 4 or Unreal 5? What are we using?
So we're using Unreal 5. Unreal 4, you can do this whole tutorial setup in Unreal 4 as well. But we're using Unreal 5 pretty much predominantly so we can make use of Lumen. But you could follow along and use either baked lighting or Unreal 4's dynamic lighting solution and get along with it just fine. There's no, I don't do, I mean, I have a good section where I talk through Lumen and how it is to get as best quality as you can out of it at this current stage. But you can do everything else in Unreal 4. There's no difference.
Yeah, I agree. Unreal 5 has a better UI. That's why I use
it. Yeah. They have refined it somewhat.
Dude, the previous one was so bad. I couldn't believe how bad it was for that long of a period. Like, I love the engine and everything, but that UI felt like it was from the 2000s.
Yeah, it was kind of I suppose it was a progression from UDK. And if you'd used UDK, it felt like a massive step up, which it was to some degree.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, why people didn't nitpick so heavily about it at the time. But yeah, UE5 has taken it to another level of ease, and things are a little bit more in the right places and obvious.
So good.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's a little bit more pleasing on the eye.
Yeah, it is.
Cool. Were there any other ones?
No, not right now. But I would encourage everybody to ask questions. I'm writing them down, and I'll ask Floyd when the opportunity arises. So keep on asking.
Okay, cool. So what shall I do now? I talk a bit about, there's a good section. This is Substance Painter. So this also, all of the programs that I'm using as well are either completely free, like World Machine has that completely free version, which isn't just a trial. It just limits the resolution that you can export height fields out of. But Substance Painter and they have a trial that if you activate it at the start of the course, you should be, or at the section that we start doing texturing in, then you'll be absolutely fine, and you'll be able to texture along with the tutorial and export out all the textures that you need. So that's fine. The modeling program section that we go through, I use Maya, but I try to explain it in a way that it should be understandable for any other modeling program. I walk through making the sword in Maya, but you don't have to. I don't go like super in depth of this is the button that you're pressing to move this or anything like that for the modeling section. I do that in the Unreal stuff and in Substance as well, and in World Machine. But for the modeling, because I know so many people use Blender or something else, right? I figured it was best to just kind of explain the fundamentals of what I'm trying to do. You can watch me model the sword up. But yeah, use whatever you like for modeling. It's just whatever works best for you. But cool. For texturing, I texture in Substance, and we kind of go into all of the tips and tricks that I use and other people use in the industry, and mostly things that I use to try and get more realism out of assets, and simple things like just layering materials, color variation, even when you think maybe there isn't any, there probably is. Adding dirt and grime, and just kind of adding a story to elements, if you know what I mean. Making sure that everything that you make and bring into engine has a past and a history, and really trying to be conscious of that, because I think that's one of the main things about making assets for games and cinematics, is to and to make them more believable, even if it's something stylized that you're making, right? But to make them feel real in the world that it is that they sit in, it's important to make sure that those things and the things around them have a history, and a history that kind of syncs up. So I do a good explanation on that. And then we end up making a sword that we bring into Engine. We don't do all the sword because it sits in a stone. And I think one of the main keys about making things for games is do exactly what you need. Save texture space, just so that the object itself has as high resolution as possible. So we make up to where we need on the sword. So that's it. That's working in Substance. I kind of talk all the way through Substance, so you'll get a good understanding of Substance as well if you've never used it before. So I feel like I talk about as much about Substance when we're using it as I do in Unreal as well. So you'll get a good understanding out of that. I also use World Machine. This is a fairly simple setup that we've got going here. The base terrain gets a bit more complex than this, but I use it to make the mountains here that you can see in the background. And we export those out. There's also I explain how to texture these inside World Machine as well and export those textures out. But we'll make some base terrains that you're going to stand on, and then we're going to make some mountains in the background, and then we're going to import all of those into Unreal's terrain tool or landscape editor.
Sorry, Floyd, if I quickly jump in. So World Machine is essentially a program where you just create the environments or like the base, just like the terrains, right?
Yes. So
and landscapes.
In World Machine, what we'll do is create. You see the mountains in the background in this scene. They're essentially just height fields that have been brought in. So that mountain is this mountain here, and you bring in the height map into Unreal. And pull it through, and that's that terrain. Well, not that specific terrain, but there's a terrain here as well, which is the main ground, and then we've got the terrain for the mountains as well. And you bring those through, and you can do all sorts of things with them. You can paint on them, as I have here, to create these sort of pathway sections, and then you can apply procedural scattering systems for things like the trees. So if I open one of these, this should deal with the trees. As long as I got the right one, and you'll see them all flick off, and then they start to load back in with the new density that I've added in there. So we use that. I also talk a bit about something that I've not used in this scene, just because the base procedural placement tools work well enough. But I talk a bit about they've got a procedural volume as well that you can use to place basically an ecosystem of plants and shrubbery and stuff like that. So there are a few tools that I talk about for placement, but yeah, that's what World Machine's used for. It's for making these terrains, and then you can export like masks out of it as well. So you can find out where all the valleys are and where the rock sections are, and you can export masks out and then mask out different materials in Unreal with their own tiling and stuff. So you can create really nice terrains and material setups using that too.
Cool. So we have a few people that are like super beginner level, and can you maybe explain like more step by step the process? Like, where do you start? Do you go from World Machine to Unreal? Like, where does Maya fit in? Like somebody was asking, like, do you not just model in Unreal Engine? Like, why do we have to go to a different program to model?
So what we do is inside the cave. I'm just working my way over here now. Inside the cave. To the cave. I do. I'm here now. Okay, so inside the cave, the terrain that we've got on the ground here is made just using Unreal's. You load a terrain in, and then you use the paintbrush, and you can sculpt it inside Unreal as well. So you can make an entire mountain inside Unreal using those sculpting tools. But where it gets a bit tricky is trying to make something that looks realistic and then also has all of the masks for the valleys and the flows and the rocks and all of those different things. So to allow ourselves to get the best possible version of that, using an external tool, is the best way to go. I do talk about how we sculpt. So this floor in here, we sculpt using Unreal's tools, and it's good enough. We can create a nice little indent in there. We can create the path so that it feels like it's progressing upwards as you get over towards the sword. So I do all of that using Unreal's base tools. But then as soon as we get outside and we want to create a mountain that gives us masks that allow us to have the trees build up in this little valley area here, then using an external tool is the best way to go. I do block out the cave using Unreal's just base geometry, so they're BSP meshes. So we block out the whole of the cave using that. I do think it's very important. And for for scenes that aren't completely natural, so if I'm doing something maybe a little bit more sci-fi, something with more hard surface, doesn't have to be sci-fi, I will use, to start the scene, I will just use Unreal's BSP meshes. I'll get a camera in and I'll just start placing blocks around. And for a good section at the start of the tutorials, we do the cave using that method. So you could, if we were just doing the cave, sure, we wouldn't need to go to World Machine. We could just keep it completely contained in Unreal. We could bring in all of our stuff from the Unreal store, and the only thing that we'd need an external modeling program for would be the sword, unless we were going to get a sword from the store as well. And you could just do it all that way. But I think for creating really expansive, detailed terrains, then using an external program like World Machine is a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. But like you said, you're going to be covering like all the steps, right? You're not going to be missing anything. You're just going to go.
No. We cover everything, even if it's not used in here. In this scene, just like the procedural volume section, even if I don't make the choice to use it here, and also just like static lighting, I didn't make the choice to use that here because we have Lumen, I'll still cover it so that you gain that understanding of it. And for smaller scenes, baked lighting's amazing. And sometimes Lumen's not so great for much smaller scenes. So maybe baked lighting's the way to go. So I try and cover it all, and you can make those decisions yourself as you go along.
Awesome. Floyd, I see some of the kind of the vegetation is moving. How does that work? How do you make a thing move? Is it like just a simple noise that it's moving it, or is there like a wind? How does that work?
You can hook them. You can do both things. So the way that the Megascan stuff works is that it's kind of a vertex offset thing built into the materials. You can also then hook that up to a wind. I do talk a little bit about that too. Getting into wind and then connecting the two starts to get a little bit more intermediate. So we talk about it briefly and just how it's set up. But yeah, it's done through shader magic, basically, is how it's done. And then you can use wind to drive that too.
Cool. Shader magic. It's
yeah.
I like that. So when I'm looking at like your scene and it looks very beautiful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that is that just being used for games, or can you use that for cinematics as well? And kind of what is the difference between creating a scene for games versus creating it for a cinematic?
So I think the gap is getting smaller and smaller constantly. I think there used to be a huge divide between things that people would make for games, so stuff that you would see in, I don't know, say The Witcher, and then something that you would see on, I don't know, the cinematics for Diablo, say. And that was just because in making a game, you need to think about all of the different specs of computers, right? There's people playing it on their mum's PC somewhere, and then there's people playing it on a super high-end thing somewhere else. But I think Unreal 5, especially with the introduction of Nanite, is really starting to bridge the gap in. I would say that the main differences are just polygon density, texture size, and translucency and transparency are the main differences between cinematics and what can be done in games. And those gaps are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And with UE5, you've got Nanite, so the gap in polygon density is almost out the window, or it is out the window, depending on the size of your scene. And then texture size as well, that you're able to bring more and more into Engine every day. And then translucency, which, yeah, I mean, glass and stuff can look amazing in Unreal 5. So at the moment, not much. There's not much of a difference. I'd still say that in those three things, there is still a little bit of a way to go to getting that like complete realism. But as you've seen in those videos that I was playing before, like these things, like we're really getting there now.
Yeah.
Like we really are. It's so close. And
close.
As long as we're able to have that, I mean, I've seen cinematics that look worse than this.
Yeah.
And the speed that we have in Unreal Engine to just do things like change the light position, like just hopefully I've gone for the right light here. And I think it was here. Zoom all the way back out. And then we can just spin the light around to the opposite direction, right? And we don't need to worry about baking anymore. Well, so not just baking, but also rendering, right? And all of those different things, which I found quite frustrating and a bit strange when I first, let me find the path again. When I first got into cinematics from games, and I was, asked to make my first thing. I don't know why I just pressed G there. Just pulled myself all the way back over to the cave. Let me fly back over here.
Back to the cave.
Yeah, I'm just going to press G again and screw myself up. Wherever the start was, that's fine. So you can just change the lights, move things around. I think that was one of the most crazy things that I thought, when I first got into cinematics, was I'd move a light and I've got to press render, and then I need to wait for it all to come up. I've got for all the buckets to render across the screen. And then if I update my textures, I don't just refresh them in the scene. I need to re-render it all out, and then you've got to wait for all the buckets to go. And it just felt insane, just the time difference between what I've made in Maya and Substance and then final product on screen. Just that constant loop of like waiting for renders is completely avoided here. You can see that I have all of these trees in this scene, and I'm still moving around at good frames per second. I'm not sure exactly what it is. I could probably tell you. What are we at now? We're about 30 most of the time. You could half the density of the trees, and then you'd be at even higher frames per second. But like we're at something good enough to really still work in the scene. And then when you render out, it's basically doing the same thing as what renderers do, but just at a much quicker pace. And you render all of the frames out properly, and then you get a final quality video. But yeah, just the time difference is insane.
I know, dude. Like offline rendering, because I hop from real time to offline rendering as well, and every time I'm rendering anything, and it takes like 2 hours per frame, where I know I would get this in real time in like Unreal Engine. It's just crazy how optimized everything here really is. The only thing is volumes. When they put some legit volumes in Unreal Engine, like that you would be able to do some simulation or input like VDBs that are actually playable, that you can actually use them. Like that's going to be a game changer. I know they're experimenting a lot with that, but it's not
with Niagara, right?
Yeah, it's gonna happen sooner or later. But I wanted to say, in terms of like that question, is this more for games or cinematics? And I do agree. It's like for both, right? You can use this workshop and apply it to games or cinematics, just because most games are actually using real-time cinematics now, right? Like most games are not doing pre-rendered cinematics anymore, and it's actually all rendered in real time. Because I know and Floyd, you worked on Gears of War as well, right?
Yeah,
and I did as well, and I know like all of those cinematics were running in real time, and it was still looking great, right? There was no need to do offline rendering. So
there's so many special, really little tricky things that you can do in Engine to push the quality in cinematics, that I don't think for in-game cinematics there's any real need to do offline rendering anymore. Like in Gears Tactics, we just have like cinematic versions of things, which is exactly what you can do in Engine as well. Like the LOD system allows you to have really high quality, like these stones can be as high quality as you need them to be up close, and as you pull away, they change in mesh density and stuff. So really, yes, so the answer to your question is that it's for both. We can do both using all of the stuff that I teach you here. And I'll try to explain where it is that we need to, if you were doing something for games, you would need to start saving and start thinking about things. But really, this environment could be in both.
Yeah. Some people are asking, what are the system specs? Like, what are the requirements to have a good like frame rate like you have?
So at the moment, it's just because I'm using like ray tracing. You could turn it off, and you would have, you would be able to have. I'm not the best buff with cards. I've got a 3080, but I think I'm not the best buff with cards. It would be hard to say. I think even like a 9 series card, you'd be able to do stuff with. I used to before, maybe like 4 months ago, my car, I had a 10. I think I had a 10 something, and I did everything that I wanted to do in Unreal Engine. Bar make some like endless terrain that has unlimited amounts of grass on it. So as long as you're smart about it, you can do most things in Engine.
Yeah. Cool. Some people are asking about virtual production. Like, is there a big difference between doing stuff for virtual production versus games? Because again, I feel like there isn't, although they are pushing quite a lot with what they did on The Mandalorian, but it's pretty much the same thing, right? Like
yes,
eventually
it's the same thing. You can open in Unreal, they have like virtual production, what they call them, kind of like prefab setups. And you can get into those and have a look and see what it is that they're doing there. But it's using exactly the same tech. You're using exactly the same engine. So it is exactly the same, really. There's no difference other than what it is that your end goal is. But it's all the same.
Yeah, I agree. It's the same thing. I think on The Mandalorian, they did have a more unlocked version of Unreal. So they could really crank the settings to the absolute max, but essentially you can get to the same quality. Yeah. There's a good question about render passes. Like, what if you want to output like depth passes or cryptomats or world position passes? Is that possible with Unreal?
Yeah, so through rendering now you can. I cannot at this exact moment list off to you every single render pass that's in it, but they have, because of virtual cameras and virtual production, all of that stuff. And they understood and understand now that people's need to or want to work in a more offline workflow, just because there are things that you can do in that workflow that you've not traditionally been able to do in Unreal. Maybe like a year ago, even, you could just render the video. That's it. I think it was maybe a year ago, maybe a little bit for longer than that. You could just render the video. You get a video or you get JPEGs. That's all you're having. But they have integrated render passes now, and you can render out in all sorts of ways. I'll maybe try and share it afterwards if there's a way to do that. I can show you the page that explains every render pass that's in there, but you can render out a bunch of them. And I've worked on a project before where we used them to work in the same way as offline rendering, but using the speed of Unreal.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of companies and studios are going to kind of move towards Unreal for rendering, right? Because it is so fast and the result is so good. And because now you can render out passes, like why would you wait for 3 days to render something
out, right?
and then do iterations, and then something doesn't work or the director wants to change a light? You have to re-render everything. Just put everything in Unreal and
just
magic.
Get it all in Unreal. I know a lot of studios are starting to use Unreal, even if they're not committing to like the full, let's just go Unreal, let's just render out in Unreal. They're at least starting to use it for previs. And I think that's a good start. And it's allowing previs at least to speed everything up, right? And just even working, I forget what it's called now, but you can, there's a way that we can all work in one scene at the same time. And working on previs with a director and doing that is like heaven, because it means that you don't have to keep like getting someone to come over and move something or give you an explanation, or someone's like doing a drawing of move this to the right by 5 pixels or whatever. They can just get into the scene with you and do it. And that stuff just really wasn't possible before, but it is now.
Yeah, and it looks much better immediately, right? Even in the previous stage, everybody's on the same page. Like, what is the light gonna look like? Where is the camera gonna be? How things are gonna look like? It's much more apparent at a fast, like at an earlier stage than it was before, because I know previs can look very rough sometimes. And layout as well. And now it's going to be, it's much easier in a lot of aspects. Sweet. Well, I don't have any other important questions, so if you have anything else you wanted to show off, go ahead.
So I guess I don't know really. I mean, we go through the cinematics, so I can show you a few of those, I guess.
I know you had a few different light setups. Like, how did you set that up? Because I know you have to use the sequencer, right?
Yeah, there are what I did for the lighting setup. So we do the scene in 3 different lighting modes. There's the version that's now, which I think is either daytime or maybe veering into the afternoon. I'm not sure I put back the light from where it was. But then I also do sort of a night version and then the afternoon version as well. And we just kind of go through how you can hijack lights and pull them into your, I'm not showing this at the moment, am I? You can hijack lights and pull them into the sequencer, as I have here. You can do all sorts of things. You can move cameras around. You can pull the height fog in and start tweaking that in sequencer as well. So there's a whole load of things that you can tweak on the fly. And have them do all sorts of things as you're moving around. You can grab objects and have them move from left to right, or do loads of crazy things with them. So I talk through that. The main lighting setup I use uses a sky dome for this, but I also talk through using Unreal's atmosphere, and you can use that if you want to as well. I like the sky dome just because I can get stars and stuff going in it too, but they've got some really cool volumetric clouds, which I talk through as well, and the lighting system there. So you can get the sun to like dynamically go from one side to the other, and you get the full range of colors as it shifts through the sky. But yeah, in order to get stars, the easier way for me anyway is to get the sky dome in, which is why we use that in the final product. But you can make those decisions if you want to stick with, even if you want to do like a dynamic day-night cycle, I'll explain how to do that, and you guys can do that.
Cool. Awesome.
But yeah, I think that's everything I've got to show, really.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more in the workshop. You know,
yes.
there's a lot of steps that you need to take to get to this point, and that's kind of the point of the workshop, right? Is to introduce people to how to start using Unreal Engine, how to like get you a quick start on all of those topics. But also, I feel like we're going to be touching to some intermediate level topics as well, right? Not just beginner level, but we do a nice little curve in difficulty.
Yeah, I think specifically stuff like creating the master shader that we use it starts to veer off into intermediate. Yeah, talking about the vertex shader stuff that we have going for the grass moving and things like that are all intermediate things. So yeah, it does ramp up. And even how much it is that we play with the cinematics and the post-process volumes to get that final look, what I think an intermediate artist, a beginner artist wouldn't get if they just did a beginner tutorial. So there's those extra things that really help to push your videos and get those things like in that looping video that I had at the start, to get those your final video outputs looking super cinematic and high quality.
Yeah, that's cool. Love it. I'm reading a question. Are you going to be covering like architectural materials such as glass or translucent materials as well?
So we cover a little bit about water. So I speak a bit about how it is that you can push the quality of some of the translucent things. We use Unreal's new water system as well as there's a water material that we're going to have a look at and see how that's built. I think building that from scratch would have been far too intermediate for this, but we look at how it is that it's built and how it is that you can push the quality of the translucency in that material. So we do, yes, have a look at that.
Awesome. And Claudia is asking, are we going to touch rigging or interactivity with Maya? I think that's out of scope, and we're not going to be focusing on rigging in this workshop. But maybe in the next one, maybe we do a more advanced workshop. Who knows?
Maybe we could throw that into the next one. I think adding things like that do really help push that like last 10% in a scene. But I think we were veering into slightly more advanced territory.
Awesome. Well, I don't see any other questions. If anybody has any last questions, now's the time. But I do want to mention again that we are going to be adding 2 more weeks to the workshop that are just going to be FX related. We're going to be doing fire, campfire. We're going to be showcasing how to do environmental kind of effects like more advanced fog, clouds, insects, stuff like that, stuff in that nature. So keep an eye on that. We're going to be showcasing how that is done very soon. There's a particle plugin for Houdini to input into Unreal. Yes, there is a particle plugin, and we're going to showcase that in the last 2 weeks when we're going to be covering FX. We're going to showcase how to, like simple examples, but how to kind of, transform particle positions into Unreal and then how to use them and showcase that workflow with Niagara. So it's going to be cool. I think it's going to be nice. Awesome. Well, cool. I think that's it, Floyd. Thank you for being on the webinar. Good luck with the workshop. I feel like it's going to be an awesome one.
So. Yeah, I'm really excited to do it. Sorry about my camera. I don't know what happened there.
But... Oh no, it's fine. That's fine.
No, I'm super excited to do it and to see what everyone comes up with. I think one thing that I will say is just I curated this tutorial so that you could make your own scenes. Like, I love making environments. It's one of my favorite things to do. And what I want to see from it is everyone make their own environments. Use the tools that I give you through it. I know I make a sword in it, but maybe center your scene around something other than the sword. Just use the tools that I give you throughout the tutorial to come up with whatever you want. And I'm really excited to see what it is that people come up with.
Awesome. Yeah, me too. Yeah, I always love to see what people make, like the different examples they make from the workshop material. I feel like it warms my heart.
Yeah, I can imagine.
All right. So, well, thanks everybody for joining. That's all that we have for you today. I hope y'all learned something new and that you're, excited for the workshop. See you soon. And remember, once a rebel, always a rebel. Bye, guys.
See you.
Bye.